my school district, my building, decided that our focus that year was going to be on helping kids feel welcome and included, and working really hard on the theme of kindness as an attempt to kind of combat some of the bullying issues that are very common in schools. And so I had been asked to be one of the guest speakers for a school-wide assembly as we started to kick fall off that year. I decided that I would go to the internet and I would find the perfect story to share with my students about how kindness is important. And as I was Googling, I came across this story about something called a lollipop moment. In this story, the speaker spoke about an experience he had had back when he was in college, where he had been wandering around campus as part of a welcoming campaign, and he gave a lollipop to a random kid who was standing in line and challenged him to turn around and give it to the girl who was in line behind him and welcome her to college. And then he totally forgot about the experience. Well, come to find out, 4 years later, that girl approached him on campus and shared with him the fact that she was moments away from walking away from her freshman year of college because she didn't feel like she was included and she didn't feel like she belonged. However, when he came up to her, very goofy, very silly, and encouraged the guy ahead of her in line to give her that lollipop, her world shifted. She had the opportunity to feel like she was part of something, and she wanted to thank this speaker for that inclusion moment that he had given her. And she also wanted to invite him to her wedding, because it turned out she married that guy right after she graduated from college. So I'm sharing this story with my students, and I come up with this brilliant idea that I'm going to have a couple of lollipops in my hand. We're going to watch the movie on the big screen in the gymnasium. I'm going to share how this story connects to them, and then I'm going to pick a couple of students out of the audience, and I'm going to give them a lollipop and challenge them to make somebody's life different. Well, at this point, I was teaching 7th and 8th grade. I didn't really know very many of the 6th graders. So I had an 8th grader. I walked up to her and I handed her the lollipop and challenged her to share that with somebody. And then my eyes wandered across the front row, and here was this little 6th grade boy. I didn't know him. I didn't know his name. I didn't know his story, but he was within arm's reach and I was running out of time. So I decided that I would go up to him and I would hand him that sucker. Sucker handed, assembly over, out of my mind. The very next year, that student showed up in my science class, and I found out that his name was Nick Mendez. Nick Mendez was from a family who was new to our country. He had only been in the States for a few years. He had lived in Colorado for a couple of years prior to coming to Caldwell, Idaho, and he was very much interested in what the possibilities of this country were. And he and I started a relationship because he came up to me and he said, "Do you remember me? You gave me a sucker last year at the start of the assembly." And I pretended that I remembered, and I told him yes, and we started talking, and he started becoming more integrated into my classroom, and we started having a lot of conversations. And he was so eager to learn, and he wanted to know everything. He had questions, he was engaged, he wanted to come on every experience and every field trip opportunity that I had available. He went to Florida with me, he went to Oregon with me. He was just there for every experience, and he soaked it up like a sponge. Well, as Nick is going through my classroom, I also was working on my PhD at that point. And so I'd come in and I'd talk to my students about the program, and they jokingly, at that point, started calling me Dr. Ferro. I hadn't earned it yet, but they didn't know that. And they started jokingly calling me Dr. Ferro. So in return, I started jokingly calling him Dr. Mendez. That name stuck and lighted a fire in him that I was not fully aware of. For me, it was just a fun opportunity to engage and joke with a student, and it was a really fun relationship to get to know him and to challenge him because he was always willing to be up for everything. He wanted to know everything about science. Well, as he continued on and left my classroom, after a couple of years of being with me as a middle school science teacher, we continued to stay in touch. And as he went through Caldwell High School, he continued to come back and reach out with me. He volunteered with my Science Bowl team. He volunteered to mentor my future city teams. He was always there. He was always wanting to be engaged and part of things, but he was also thirsty for everything that he could come up with. He ended up doing an internship with NASA. He ended up having opportunities to serve at the state level on different committees. He was, I believe he was chosen as a representative for our State Board of Education when they were looking for student voice in things. And we just had this great opportunity to watch him grow and spread his wings and find who he was. And then he told us all the big news that as he graduated from high school, he was going to Stanford. And his goal at Stanford was to study planetary biology and ecosystems, but also with a policy minor because he wanted to have a voice in the world that was prepared for him. Even to this day, every time he comes home from college, he still calls me up and we go get coffee together and we talk about the latest chapter in the Nick Mendez lore. But I am very, very proud of the fact that I have been able to be a part of his life and to be part of the Nick Mendez story. I am very, very honored to have a small chapter in that because he is one of those students that's just going on to change the world. He is full of ideas and energy and enthusiasm for life, and he's been just an incredible inspiration to me. And when I think back to it, it all started with that lollipop in 6th grade. And little did I know that as I was telling kids about somebody else's lollipop moment story, was actually starting one of my own.